This guy lives a little bit less than 2 hours from me, but we only seem to like actually see each other at conferences, like 7 hours away or whatever. This guy launched his blog back in 2012 as a hobby. Okay, it was just a hobby blog, right? Then in 2014, he decided to become a full-time blogger. Since then, his blog has grown into a full-time business. This is like no exaggeration. It's reaching almost 200,000 people around the world. And we'll talk about what space he's in and all that today. It's a really cool story. I've known this guy for about 7 years. Until recently, I had no idea. He's actually published 5 books. He and I have talked on the phone quite a bit. I didn't know that. I don't know how that didn't come up in conversation. But he's published 5 books. His story is not only inspiring, guys, but he's going to share some amazing, practical, like easy to implement, helpful strategies, basically for taking your big idea and turning it into a blog. It could be a podcast. It could be turning it into a book. Plus, he's going to share his keys for picking up traction with your online platform. And I asked him to share his secret ingredient to go from the title of this, which is From Average Joe to Thriving Pro, with his blog. Guys, welcome with me, Mike Berry.
I'm going to try and bring Mike into the stream.
Otherwise, it's going to be really awkward.
I'm not sure if his video is working or not.
Uh-oh.
All right, Mike, are you there?
I see a blue rectangle.
Yeah, me too. And let's see, his microphone just unmuted. So
I'm going to take a picture and send it to him. This is what we see.
I'm going to step off the screen.
Well, everyone, say hey there in the chat. Let me know where you're joining. I'm going to try to get Mike on here. See, there's Mike's face on my text. Yeah, so I guess I'll just tell Mike's story for him. Actually, I kind of already did. It's about all I know about Mike's story, to be honest. I'm just kidding. Let me do one thing real quick here. I'm on that way. Well, here's what we're going to talk about today once we get Mike on. If we don't get Mike on, I'm going to ad lib. I'm just going to make up some stuff. Who knows what we'll talk about? We're going to talk about Mike. Like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about how he kind of started his platform. And then, I mean, literally, like I said, guys, he just started as a hobby, just something, we'll talk about this, but he's in the adoption space. So he helps parents, adoptive families, to kind of navigate those waters, which I personally have never adopted anyone.
Matt.
What's
that?
Can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear you.
We just lost your audio completely.
Oh, weird. Hopefully everyone heard me fine in Facebook and YouTube world.
I have no idea what you're saying.
Oh, man. This is like the tech
You were talking and then just midstream it stopped. So I'm going to try and mute you and bring you back. You want to check
All right, how about now?
Audio source? No. Just for good measure, we're going to bring Mike the Blue Square back. Just to...
Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Oh, and all right.
Nothing.
So, thanks for sticking with us as we troubleshoot a couple things here. The technology, when it works, is great. And when it doesn't, it is not so great. So going to bring Matt back into the broadcast.
All right. Can you hear me?
No, your audio is completely gone.
Okay, so I got this comment. All right. So it's on your end, Robbie.
It's on my end?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right.
All right. So, guys, I'm going to start a phone call with Robbie.
No, we're good.
All right. Everybody can hear us. This is good. Faye and Rudy and Jim say they can hear me fine.
They
Robbie,
can hear me fine.
They can hear you but not see you. You are a blue rectangle, Mike. So good to talk to you.
It's good to talk to you too, man. This is crazy. Can you hear me okay, Matt?
I can hear you loud and clear. So try
Okay.
this. Is your camera, when you go down to the bottom of your screen, do you see a little gear icon right above your
Mhm.
video?
Yeah, it says I've got my FaceTime HD camera on, 720 HD, my microphone. Man, I could see all. It's all, from my point of view, it looks like it's all working, but I do have a blue shirt on, so maybe it's just like capturing my entire blue shirt. Maybe
Well, you
people
would
just,
think then your head would just be floating. You would just be a
you'd
floating
think,
head.
yeah, yeah,
Let me
yeah.
go, guys. Thank you for bearing with us. We will officially get started. So yeah, real quick. Hello to Faye. I saw Faye, Jim, Rudy on. Those are the names I can remember for the last few seconds here. Let's see. Yep, I just checked on the Facebook page. You are a blue rectangle.
Oh
Always
boy,
fun.
yeah.
Well, you know what?
Technology, man.
We'll run with it. You and I will just
Let's spitfire it, man.
You know, I wish though at least that it had like the little, the little audio wave thing where it like goes up and down. I wish that at least it had that for you right now.
It would be fun, but and honestly, like my egg head floating on the screen would also be really fun to watch too.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it doesn't. YouTube and Facebook do not want to see my face right now, and I don't know why that is.
That is too
I've
funny.
tried to be nice to both, but they must not.
All right,
must
so
not like me
real
very
quick,
much.
let's try this. Try leaving and coming back.
Okay.
We'll see if that
All right.
fixes it, guys. And so, guys, the reason I want you to see Mike, and I appreciate your patience because Mike's passion for what he does is so amazing. And he's just a good dude. So, like Robbie comes back on. Robbie can't hear me, or can you? Can you hear me now?
I can hear everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was that same audio issue we were having before we went live, and so it just finally, the setting just clicked or something. So
I don't know what to do. What do I like? Everything's on. I'm like, should I
so
talk?
strange. So all right, it looks like Mike is back. I'll bring him back up, and we have video. It looks like.
All right.
So
holy cow!
go back
Wow.
to the background.
There we
All right,
go.
so what we've learned today is that this is just this is funny. Like that's the thing. When that's what I did. I left and came back. It turned out I never needed to leave. That it was just it's all Robbie's fault.
blame it on Robbie, right?
Robbie's like, I want
don't
to come back on. I want to come back on camera right now and say something. But dude, well, welcome, man.
Yeah, good to be here, man. Good to see you again.
How's the weather 90 minutes from here?
Well, you know what? It was pouring down rain for a while, but
here.
now it's muggy. And I'm sitting outside on a covered porch because the building behind me has better internet than my house, which is over there. And now I have to deal with the heat. So it's like, which is more important, internet connectivity or air conditioning? I went with connectivity.
Yeah, it's a tough one. That's a tough one. Yeah, it's it's like my office right now. My thing is I'm freezing. I'm in, our office and the studio are down in the basement, and it's great because that's where the gym is, and that's great because it's cold down here. But right about this time every day, I'm putting on a jacket and like a space heater. And I'm like, it's just kind of weird to go live in the middle, like early July, wearing a hoodie,
wearing a parka.
Yeah. So it takes a few minutes. I need the lights. Got to about 20 minutes from now, I'll be fine because the heat from the lights will start to warm it up down here.
Yeah.
So it's why do you have studio lights on all day, Matt? Because it's cold.
You got to warm up. Yeah, and which is pathetic for those of us living here in Indiana. It's been so dang hot here. And then we complain about being cold in the air conditioning. So some people have what do you complain? They're like, what are you complaining about, man? I'm like, seriously, it just gets cold and I have to step outside.
Yeah. Well, we have what I call a 3 climate house this time of year, because it's the original. Like, this is what I tell people all the time, like that I hate about newer homes that were, especially like in that 1990 to like 2010 range, they started to kind of go back the other way. Here's the ultimate test, right? If I kick the banister, is the banister going to completely fall off, or am I going to break my foot? You go back to like the 1910 homes, I'm going to break my foot. If I kick our banister, the whole thing will come down, from the top. So when they did the duct work, it was done. It was like, I have the feeling that like it was in this stretch where I think every home that was built in America, the question was, I have this much money. How many square feet can I get? And it was like, well,
That's
if we build
totally
it as
the
cheaply
case.
as possible, we can do this. And
Yeah.
so they built this house and the duct work is terrible. So the middle level, 72 degrees. My office, 62 degrees. Our upstairs rooms, 79 degrees.
Yeah, where the
I'm
bedrooms
like,
are and
I get
everybody
all
has to
three
sleep.
climates.
Yeah, you really do. And I lived in a house like that. And now I live in a 1930s farmhouse.
Yeah.
And yeah, you kick anything in our house, you'll break your foot, right?
I love it.
I was there. I was in that house built in the late 90s. And more
This was
problems in that.
2001.
Yeah, more problems in that house in 1 year than I've ever had in my old farmhouse. So yeah.
Best day and the worst day of my life was the day we became homeowners.
It's so true, man.
Yeah,
I agree.
10 years ago, almost to the day. So,
Wow.
well, I mentioned I told a little bit of your story while we were figuring out the tech issues there, but I think you could probably fill in some of the gaps.
Yeah.
Pretty much what they know about you so far is that you live close to me and you're in the adoption space.
Yeah.
So there may be like one or two other things you want to add.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, I think it almost goes without saying how you got into the adoption, niche. Like you adopted some kids and you realized it was harder than you thought it was going to be. But tell us kind of that backstory. And then I want to go from there to like the early days of your blog, kind of pre full-time blog days. So fill us in there, bud.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I was on a coaching call this morning with one of our coaching clients through our adoption platform. And I described it as, if parenting was a body of water, we were 5 feet below the surface, which is how a lot of parents feel, right? But that was our story going back about 10 years ago. And we actually adopted. So we have 8 children all through adoption. And I'm not making that up. Everybody always freezes like, are you kidding? Like, no, I wouldn't kid about something like that.
What did I, because I didn't even know that till recently. I thought you had like 5. What did I write to you? Something like, is there medication for that or something?
Yeah. Something like that. I think it was like, dude, you have 8 kids and that's all the text said or something like that. So I don't know what it was, but it was something like that. And I'm like, yeah, true story. So yeah, so we started the adoption journey in 2002, private adoption. 2004, we entered into the foster care system as foster parents, but that ended up out of 23 kids fostered. We ended up adopting 6 of those kids into our home permanently. You fast forward right about 2011, we were drowning, absolutely, positively drowning as parents. We were overwhelmed. We were exhausted. We felt like we were failing, frankly. And begrudgingly, we ended up at this support group down in Indianapolis. And it was a post-adoptive support group. Any adoptive parents on the call here would understand post-adoptive services and whatnot. But we begrudgingly went because, frankly, support groups, I had been to them before, and it just made me feel worse. And I didn't need anybody telling me that I sucked as a parent because I already felt like that, right? I already felt like a failure. But begrudgingly, we ended up at this support group, and frankly, long story short, there was they were offering free childcare and free food, free Chick-fil-A. So you're like, you got to go for free Chick-fil-A, right?
Dude, I would go to an AA meeting for free Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what's going on, you'd sign up, right? Yeah. Scuba diving and free Chick-fil-A, I'm there, right? Skydiving, whatever. But anyways, we went, and what's interesting is that in these post-adoptive services, we sat with fellow parents just like us, struggled just like us. And we listened to a range of speakers basically give us insight into childhood trauma, into children who had a trauma history, right? And we had never heard it taught like that before. We had never had anybody say, listen, your child behaves this way because they've gone through this. And if you can understand that and respond differently, it begins to change things in your household. It was like, wow, we walked out of this was probably like a 6-week group. We walked out of there feeling hopeful and filled up in a way we had never felt before. And I remember sitting in we had a big old 12-passenger van back then. And I remember sitting in that 12-passenger van driving home. Kids are acting like monkeys on meth behind me. I mean, they're just like climbing over the seats, fighting with each other. None of our problems went away. But here's my wife, Kristen, and I driving down the road, and I'm thinking, man, I just feel alive for the first time in my entire adult life, parenting life, right? And we realized that for the first time, we realized we're not alone. And everybody on this call can understand this, that when you are struggling with something, whatever it is, and it is your crutch, it is your thorn in the side, whatever you want to call it. You feel isolated. You feel like I must be the only one that deals with this, whether it's an addiction or a struggle or a whatever it is. But then when you realize that there's other people out there that, as I like to say, limp through life the same way you do. In other words, they have the same struggle. Your problems don't necessarily go away, but you finally feel like you have some hope because you're not the only one struggling. And you move out of isolation. And so I realized, holy cow, if we feel this sense of hope by discovering this, there's got to be other people that need to know they're not alone. There's got to be other parents out there that need to know, listen, what you're dealing with your kid is not just you. It's not your fault. It's their trauma history, and that's causing the behaviors you're dealing with. But there's a way through this. And about 6 to 8 months later, I launched our blog, which was originally called Confessions of an Adoptive Parent.
I remember that.
And I think when we first met, like 5-6 years ago, that's what it was still called. And
can you believe it's been 6 years almost to the day?
It's crazy. That's crazy how fast time goes. And we only live 90 minutes. I probably did. I probably have more hair on my chin than I do on my head nowadays. But here's what's interesting. I remember. Okay, so the long story short with that blog is that about 3 years after I launched it, it was about 3 years. It was about 2015 or so. I launched it officially in 2012. Suddenly we began to see like exponential growth. We started to see like all of a sudden there's readers in other states, and then there's readers in Canada, and then there's readers in Australia, and then it just kind of grew like wildfire all across the country. And that was pretty cool to see that growth, because then all of a sudden we realized, okay, maybe there's more to this. Maybe we can actually start not only just writing every week and sending out positive, hope-filled messages, but maybe we can start doing this as our job. Like maybe this could be what we do for a living. And I think I shared this with you, but the long story short, I got fired suddenly with no warning from my other job, the job I used to work. And it left me with this: do I go back to doing that? Or do I try to make a go at this with this platform, right? And I decided in October of 2014. I know my dates are a little wonky because I'm trying to remember all of them lined up. So if people are like, "Wait a second, you just said 2015, then you said 2014," I can explain that later. But basically, there is a method to the madness, I promise. But basically, I sat down and I remember thinking, okay, I can go at this, and I began to retrace my steps. Like, okay, what did we do? What steps did we follow that made this platform successful, that made this platform grow to where it's at right now as a hobby? And how can I take those steps and make this not only a hobby, but now what I do for a living? And I legitimately stepped into nothing. I kid you not. There was no books, no speaking invites, no revenue. I legitimately no pressure, because I had kids that had medical needs and that needed insurance and all that good stuff, right?
Also food.
And food, but we could hunt something and kill it if we needed to. I'm just kidding. And so here's the quick of this is that we set out on a journey and began to apply some very specific principles that we had learned along the way. And it has helped us grow this platform into not only a blog, but now it's a full-blown company. an online resource and support company that works with upwards of anywhere from 150 to 200,000 plus readers, subscribers, customers, clients, all year long, all around the world.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So it's been quite a journey.
Wow. So guys, we're going to talk about how Mike did that. Like nobody starts a blog, unless you're, famous for other reasons. Nobody starts a blog and has an audience on day one. I always joke that the first people you have on your blog, and your first subscribers, I mean, they should be people who have the same last name as you. Or they're like 1 degree of separation. They either have the same last name as you, or they are married to someone who has the same last name as you. Like, that's just normal. There's nothing wrong with that when you're first starting out. That's who we want to get. But how he went from that to having this audience of a couple 100,000 people, and we want to talk about that. So guys, if you have any questions for Mike about that process, they could be completely off the wall questions. They could be exactly what we're talking about at the time. Clarification questions, doesn't matter. Any questions, just pop them in the comments, and we will see those there. So I'll start off with kind of a question for you, Mike. Like, one of the things that you've done is you've taken this, like, we're skipping all the way ahead to like 2021 now. Really, 2020, I think, is when you started kind of transition. Then we'll go back. But like, you've made I wouldn't say a shift, you just added on something to your business where you're not only helping adoptive parents and doing the thing that you've done for the last, almost 9 years now, but you've also kind of developed this passion for helping people who are basically where you were back in 2012, 13, 14, to navigate those waters up. Yeah. In a sense, it can kind of seem like a natural progression, but they really don't have anything to do with each other. Helping That's aspiring correct. Bloggers, they could be an aspiring blogger they could also be in the adoption space, but they could be an aspiring blogger about golf or, badminton, or I'm just naming sports. That's, I got to talk about some, sandwiches. I mean, I'm also hungry. I'm thinking about sports and food right now, dude.
Past lunch. Yeah.
It is. I haven't eaten yet, and I'm really, really hungry.
We better get off the food topic, because I haven't eaten either, and I've been dealing with coaching calls consistently. So we need to stop with the food talk now.
It could be about cooking or recipes.
Yeah. It's not helping.
Anything.
Not helping.
Yeah, I know. So how did that happen? Like, was there a genesis, like a light bulb moment? Was it a slow transition? How'd that all happen?
Yeah. So it was, I was probably I launched in 2014. I was probably in year 4 or 5 when I recognized a couple of things. I would be at these conferences, these parenting conferences that had nothing to do with, nobody knew what marketing was, or email sequences or lead magnets. You never heard that kind of talk being tossed around. I knew all of that because.
But you didn't know that in 2012, did you? You didn't come in with a marketing background.
Okay. Not at all. In fact, the first 2 people that I was introduced to back then, 2 mutual friends of ours, Michael Hyatt and Jeff Goins, that's where I started. That's where and Jeff Walker, that's how I learned to do a lot of what I do now. And so, but I kept getting this question. I'd be at these conferences. There's thousands of people, we're signing books. We're answering questions on trauma, where people came to our workshop. They want to pick our brains about disrupted attachment, you name it. Right. And little by little, I began to see this influx in people that would be standing there, and they would say, and almost verbatim at different conferences all across the country, they'd say, I don't have a question about adoption or trauma or parenting. I want to know how you built what you've built. And at first it kind of caught me off guard. Like, what do you mean by that? And they're like, well, this is what you do for a living, right? Yes, it's what I do for a living. Well, how did you, I remember one person saying, well, listen, I saw you post this blog post, and it got like, a couple thousand likes and all that, and a couple hundred shares. How do you do that? Right? How do you create something that does that? Oh, and so I'd stand there just kind of off the cuff, say, well, I'll do this, follow this person. but that those questions kept coming up, and then they were always followed by, I've always wanted to do X, Y, and Z, but, right? So I've always wanted to write a book. I've always wanted to launch a blog. I have this idea for a podcast. I have this crazy idea for a business, but, and it was the but that always got me, because here's me. I'm a big dream person. I'm a risk taker. You ask my wife, my risk taking makes her nervous at times, right?
Nice.
You know, a lot of it within our company, it's a lot of, and the team is the same way. Like, we're going to do what? You know, and they're like, they're working to reel Mike back in. Cause I'm like, buddy, we're aiming for the sky on this one. You know, there's people that need to hear this. So I'm a big dream person. But one of the things I learned to do years ago was, my big dreams are one thing, but I've got to be a bigger doer. Right. So you can dream it, but if you're not willing to take the action steps, your dream will never leave the dream canister and go on to like something big, right? Or world changing, world revolutionary. So I recognize, okay, these people have this big dream, but they feel like they can't ever they can't ever turn it into reality. And then I would have people say to me, like, I tried to start a blog, but I feel like I have to be some marketing genius to know how to start a self-hosted WordPress blog, or how, you know, like, I looked at email marketing, like ConvertKit and MailChimp and Aweber and, you know, all these different, like, I don't know what do I need to know about that? I don't know how to do any of that. And here's what's interesting about that. I'm watching these people pour out the same frustrations that I had to figure out 7 years ago.
Oh yeah.
And frankly, probably lost most of my hair doing, right?
So you're saying when you started your blog, you had hair?
No, I
Okay.
haven't had hair since 2006, but maybe I lost some more follicles, a little more gray on the sides, right? And so I realized, you know what, there is, maybe it's time for me to step into more of a coaching manner in terms of like helping people turn their dreams into a reality, helping people build their blog, launch their podcast, write a book. And so last year in 2020, we launched Platform Accelerator, which it does just that, helps people turn their big ideas into a blog or a podcast or a book, helps them grow their online audience. So that's really what's led me up to this point of helping people do that.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. I think, you know, when I think of what we do, and I say we, meaning kind of the collective, like people who help people with their platforms, whether it be you or me, I tell people all the time, it's like, all I'm doing is saying, here's how I screwed up, or here's what took me 200 hours. And here's how you can not make the same mistake, or here's how you can do it. What took me 200 hours to figure out, you can do in a matter of minutes or a few hours. That's really all that it is. You know, when I teach people, like, you know, we have a course, you know, called Find Affiliates Now. Yeah. And you know, the whole pitch for that is, it took me about 5 years to figure this system out.
Right.
I'm going to give it to you. It's a 90-minute course, 78-minute course. And in 78 minutes, you will learn what took me 5 years. You know, probably I'm going to estimate 2,000 hours to kind of perfect, about 500 to even conceptualize. Why? Because I didn't know when I started in this in 2005, and I'm like Googling how to start an affiliate program. There were like 3 blog posts.
Yeah.
There were no courses. There was nobody training on this stuff. So I invented it, and I sucked at it for a long time. You know, and it's like, you don't have to do that. And that's, I mean, I love coming from that perspective, because there's this tendency to feel like, well, I'm not an expert. And you'd be the first thing. You're not an expert. You just know exactly how to teach them to avoid the same mistakes you made. Yeah.
I don't have a marketing degree. I don't have a graphic design degree, but what I have is the scars from all of those frustrating nights. In fact, my my old office, I lived in a different house at the time. I think when we first met, I lived in a little small farmhouse in central Indiana. And I had a little office that was probably no more than maybe 12 by 12 or 10 by 10. It was super small.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, buddy, if those walls could talk, and recite some of the things that they heard spoken, it was a lot of frustration, right? A lot of staring at the computer screen doing this.
Yes.
Like, I don't know how to do this. And a lot of my clients now, we start there. Like, I know this is you right here, right? So let's walk through how to get past that, and let's go step by step in launching this into reality.
Yeah.
So yeah.
If you ask my nieces, who I lived with back in when I started my first online business back in 2002. Yeah. If you through like 2005, I lived with my sister because I was broke. And I paid her like $200 a month in rent. And if you ask them, not now, they're in their 20s, but if you ask them back then, what does Uncle Matt do? They would say he talks to the computer.
Yes. Or screams at the computer.
Yeah. I never really screamed, but it was more of just it's a stupid thing, not doing the stupid thing that it's supposed to freaking do, and it's like,
I'd have some beeps. Beeps over mine.
Oh, there were some, the ampersand, $, hashtag. Yeah, I'm just looking at the keyboard, at symbols. And it's like, we look at that and it's almost like now it's like, oh my gosh, I was so dumb. Like I spent 14 hours trying to set up an automation. When now it's just like
5 minutes. Less.
Either I know how to do it or I say, hey, Robbie, set that up,
right.
But it's like, that's where everybody is. And I think the message that I would send, I'm sure you'd probably say the same thing. It's like the first thing that people need to understand about being in that place is it's totally normal.
Oh, absolutely.
It's totally normal. And every single person that you look up to, you mentioned 3 guys who've all been clients of ours, Jeff Walker, Michael Hyatt, and Jeff Goins, which I mean, even now is kind of surreal to say that, they've all been clients, whatever. But like, there's all people that I look up to, they were all right there. They all were right there. Just, they have all seriously considered at some point taking their laptop, taking their computer and throwing it into the nearest body of water.
Right. Yeah.
And that's just totally, totally normal. I want to talk to you about something that just popped in my head. I pulled this up. So I think I mentioned to you, because I think I asked you, as a matter of fact, and you responded on Facebook. I wrote about you on estimated page. We'll see. It is estimated page 261 of my book that'll come out in about a year. And you've written 5 of them.
Can't wait for that. Yeah, that's fun.
I want to talk about. So I'm not going to read what I wrote in the book. It's literally a paragraph in a chapter. Step 10 of the book is all about creating consistent content. And I give a few examples. I think I got like 4 or 5 examples, including my own, of just content rhythms, and like, in what you do. So I want to talk about content for a second, because that's where a lot of our people get stuck, Mike, is like, well, how do I create more content? And part of that is just, is really just creating that rhythm. So I want to talk about this. Like, I do want to point out something that Mike's got. And Robbie, if you can pop this in the comments, please. Mike has, it's something called the Audience Growth Guide and Worksheet. You guys, you need to grab this. I'm going to tell you, like, it's the one thing that could save you. I don't want to say like thousands of hours.
Maybe not thousands, but it could save several
hundreds of hours of what Mike showed earlier with, and it might save your computer from getting thrown in a body of water. If you just go to mattmcwilliams.com/grow with Mike, mattmcwilliams.com/grow with Mike. Robbie will drop that link, but you could also type it in. Go there and grab that guy. But let's go back to this content thing again. What does your content rhythm look like, and how has it evolved? I think it's important for people to see, like, you've got it dialed in now. So I want to talk about now, but then maybe I want to go back to like when you didn't quite have it so dialed in.
Yeah. So I'll take you all the way back to July 2012. I was sitting with a friend at a pub in Panama City, Florida. And this idea
Where
to
all
start
good
this
ideas
blog.
come from.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Pubs
So
and
we're
spring
sitting
break
there.
locations.
Exactly. Yeah. At the time, I was down there as a youth pastor with a group of students. So I got away, hung out with this friend, and I had this idea for this blog, and I'm pitching it to him, and he's like, "Man, that's amazing! You should do that." And he said, I remember him looking at me and saying, "What are you gonna do to make sure this succeeds?" Which is a huge question. I'm like, in reality, I want to say I have no idea. And I had already been down the road of writing. I had a couple of hodgepodge blogs that just did not. They were all over the place, right? And I remember what I said to him was, I don't know exactly how to answer that, but I do know this: I'm gonna show up every week. And he goes, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "I'm gonna write every week. No, it doesn't matter what's going on. I'm gonna pull myself out of bed, and I'm gonna sit down at my computer, and I'm gonna write a 500 to 800 word blog post." And I just get flies landing on me. Sorry, guys. Yeah.
But you've got good Wi-Fi.
I do have good Wi-Fi, yes. And here's the thing. Up until to this day, we have not missed that mark.
Yeah.
2012, September 2012, we launched the blog. I'm sitting here with you, July 2021. We've never missed that mark with our content, which now has evolved to not just blog posts, but podcasts. We have live Facebook feeds that we do in some of our closed groups. We've not missed that mark.
That's awesome.
Consistency is where you have to begin in creating content. In fact, I'll use you as an example. I watched you write this book over the last, gosh, I don't even know how long you were working on it.
5 months.
5 months. But I watched you post, and I thought that was a brilliant move to post on Facebook. I did this many words. And sometimes I remember seeing that you would say, I only got X amount of words out, right? But the important thing is you got those words on paper. Consistency is where content creators have to begin. That has to be your foundation. You have to show up every week. One of the 5 C's that we teach in platform and audience growth is community, right? Your community grows when you show up every week, right? So our rhythm is based on consistency, right? Every week we post a blog post. Every week we podcast. We publish a podcast. Every week we publish multiple Facebook videos or Facebook live broadcasts, and that is all listed out on our calendar every month or every day, and we try to stay 3 months ahead on our production. We don't always hit that mark because we're in the middle of the summer. July, we all power down in both Honestly Adoption and Platform Accelerator. So we're all kind of powered down right now. We're on hiatus with our podcast, but we're doing that preparing for August and September where we hit the ground running. We follow a consistent content calendar. We use a platform called CoSchedule.
And I want to back up.
Brilliant.
You're on hiatus with the podcast, but it's still churning out an episode a week. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
And
that's in terms of recording
right there,
yeah.
That is like the biggest differentiator I see between professionals and like hobbyists, professionals and amateurs in the content creation spaces. You said, I want to take July off for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people are like, well, I guess that just means no podcast in July. And I use that. No, what that means is we got to do 2 a week in June or 2 a week in May or whatever the rhythm is to get ahead. Because, come hell or high water, you're releasing 52 episodes this year.
Right.
Dude, I love that. Okay. So go back to what you're saying.
We use a content calendar called CoSchedule, which has been super helpful for our team. We use it in both, honestly, the Honestly Adoption Company and Platform Accelerator. And it's great because, here's an example. This last Christmas, we were all off for 2 weeks straight, but blog posts still published, social media still published. podcast still published. It was all there. We just worked our tail ends off up until December 23rd, I think, is when everybody stopped. And then everything published. And it's important because you got to look at it like this. It's almost like you're inviting people to a party, right? Every single week. And picture it like you're inviting them to your home, right? Get everybody to your home. They're there, right? Not necessarily to spend the whole time interacting with you, but they do expect to see you, right? You're the host. It's your house. So how awkward would it be to show up and the person's not there? The host isn't there. You've got to show up for your people because they're showing up for you. They're showing up to learn. And, one of the things you mentioned being an expert, struggling with that, am I an expert? One of the things you have to get out of your system is that and grasp the fact that you are an expert in whatever field you're communicating in. Even if you feel like you're not, people show up expecting to learn from you. Right. Yeah. Even if you're a YouTuber who just does these hilarious videos, somebody's showing up, your audience is showing up to learn something from you, right? Or to gain something from you. They view you as the expert. It doesn't matter if you think you're an expert or not. Yep. People are showing up believing that you are an expert and you have a perspective that can help change their life. You have to understand that you are one, even if you don't feel like you are one. It's crucial.
I mean, that's the thing is like, you said it. What was the expression you said? Your children were acting like monkeys on meth.
Yeah. I have lots of other expressions.
Yes, you can draw in. I know a lot of your podcast content is you interview child psychologists and they have a white code and they have a degree, the letters behind their name and they're experts at that certain thing. But like, what makes you an expert is the fact that you have 8 kids in the back of your 12-passenger van. Two of them are trying to kill each other. One of them's got his finger up his nose. The other one's going God knows what. One of them hasn't talked to you in 3 days. The other one's failing some subject. That's what makes you an expert. And I think about, like, there was this lady I talked to years ago. I was interviewing her for a mastermind, and she was just like, well, I asked, like, what's your biggest struggle? And she's like, well, I'm not an expert. I don't know how to compete with, all these people who are like, doctors and, like Temple Grandin and people like that are her competition. And I was like, did I hear you right earlier? You said you have 2 autistic children, which is very rare, Right. I was like, so you have 2 autistic children. I said, can I ask you a question? She's like, yeah. I said, have you ever wanted to kill your children? She's like, about once a week. And I'm like, that's what makes you an expert. Like the fact that you wanted to and haven't.
Right.
And please don't misunderstand. Like, she isn't literally like made plans for strangling her children. Right. It's just that she has been at her wit's end and yet she's surviving. And the reality is when you have children with special needs, and I think, do any of your children? So you know this, like sometimes you go months at a time and it's just survival mode.
Absolutely.
And so that's what makes you an expert. You don't need to know the neurobiology of it or any of that stuff. What they want to know is, how do I get on an airplane with my autistic child and land in the other city without causing a scene? That's all they want to know. Yeah. And nobody would none of the doctors, unless they have an autistic child and have done it, have any freaking clue how to make that happen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and it's also, it's also finding your way out. You mentioned back in 2005, talking to your computer, and I'm there in 2012, look at doing this. We found our way out. Yeah. And it's expert by experience. It's not expert by credentials, because like I said, I had to learn how to grow an online audience. And I didn't have somebody speaking over my shoulder. I didn't have somebody sitting here saying, do this, or pointing and saying, okay, now click that. Now, create this. Nobody did that. And that was hard. I had to figure it all out on my own. I had to pull out from these experts I was following, like, okay, what does that mean? Because you can't just get on the phone. You can't just get personal time, as a nobody blogger sitting in a little home office. You can't just pick up the phone and call. You have to figure this out. And you said it yourself. Now what used to take me hours upon hours takes me minutes, right? And I want to show you how to do that. I want to show you how to create that. and how to launch that. And so that's what we're doing with Platform Accelerator. We want to be that over the shoulder voice that says, okay, do this, now do that. Here's what you need to consider here. One of our clients just struggles making sense of integrations, right? So if I use ConvertKit, how does that integrate with lead pages, right? And I remember being there. I remember sitting there thinking, wait, how did you create that? I had no idea that you could have an account with lead pages and you could create, a really beautiful, snazzy lead. I had no idea, right? I needed somebody to say, oh, this is it. You just do it. You do this, and this is how you do it. This is how you create that. And so that's what we're doing with one of our clients right now. We're just walking her through step by step what is simple now, but 7 years ago, we were pulling our hair out over. I was pulling my hair out over, trying to figure out,
And the proof is,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's nice and shiny.
One of the ways that I know you can help people do that is with that guide and the worksheet we talked about earlier, guys. So again, make sure you grab that, the audience growth guide and worksheet. Just go to mattmcwilliams.com/grow with Mike, MIKE, not MIC. mattmcwilliams.com/grow with Mike. Grab that guide from the worksheet from Mike. So what you talked about community, you said you're like, oh, we have these 5 C's, this 5C framework for audience growth. And you talked about community. I'm sure I'm not the only one who wants to know what the other 4 C's are.
Yeah. So you have community, people, anything that you're building, be it a blog or a podcast or a social media presence, you need to be building community.
Absolutely.
You have to. I mean, as Stu McLaren says, people come for the content, they stay for the community. One of my favorite quotes of all time.
That quote is in the book.
Yeah. It's so abundantly true. I mean, the way that our blog has grown is through our Facebook group, our Facebook page, and our Facebook groups. So you need to be building community. Talked about consistency, right? Are you showing up every week to your platform? Are you showing up to your blog? Are you showing up to your book? Are you showing up for your people? Another one of our C's that's really, really important is clarity. Do people know in a matter of seconds when they log on to your site or they listen to your podcast that they are in the right place, right? That this is something that can help them. So if you visit our site, Honestly Adoption, we've made it very clear that what we do is provide parent-to-parent support and transformational education to help you become the best parent possible, right? Because we have a slew of parents showing up, as you described a little while ago, who are like, I'm drowning right now, right? I just want to make it to the city. I want this plane to land without air marshals intervening, So you have to create whatever it is you're creating, the book you're writing, the blog you're launching, the podcast you've started. Do people know what you're all about, right? One of our favorite resources is the Story Brand Framework that Donald Miller teaches, and because it's all about one of the primary things that he talks about is getting very clear on your message. He calls it the grunt test. Is it so abundantly simple what you're all about that a caveman could grunt it out, could scribble it on the wall, grunt it out, right? Simplicity is where you start.
It's my filter for everything. Like, affiliate marketing. Good.
Yeah.
Got it.
Absolutely. Are you compelling? Is your story, is your message compelling people to live a better life?
Yeah.
And that can be with everything. You mentioned sandwiches earlier. I immediately thought about a sandwich maker, or a sandwich shop, right? Well, you take a sandwich shop can compel people to live a better life by providing the healthiest sandwiches possible.
Thought we
right?
agreed not to talk about food anymore.
Yeah, I know. I brought it back around. It's getting rough over here. It just is.
My stomach just was like.
Yeah, we took a break from that. I just brought it all back, right? But the key question we asked there is: does your website, does your book, does your podcast, does your blog, does it lead people to better?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we made it a point to always close our blog posts out with a high value encouragement. We always want to propel people towards better, right? So we're not going to just leave you at the end of a blog post or end of a podcast episode wondering, Well, that was great, but what now, right? No, here's what we want to challenge you to do. We want to challenge you to do this in order to make this part of your life different, or this, this interaction with your child different. So is it compelling? And then creativity. A lot to be said about creativity, right? Title, premise, big idea. Is it creative, right? Or is it confusing? One of my favorite books to reference is a book by a woman named Lovey Ajayi, if you guys know her. She writes a book called I'm Judging You. And it's super creative, because what are we taught about judgment? Well, you shouldn't judge people. And yet here's this book by this woman who basically obliterates pop culture called I'm Judging You. And it's creative, right? It makes people step back and say, oh, well, I want to read a book like that, because she has a lot to say about pop culture. And there's a lot of ridiculous things that happen in pop culture, right? So do you have a creative title? One of the things that when I wrote a book several years ago called Winning the Heart of Your Child, which another mutual friend of ours, Chad Allen, was a great help with.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest exercises he put me through. Like, you can't just have chapter titles. Your chapter titles need to draw people in, right? They can't just be a general. And so we went through every chapter that I listed off in my proposal and just red markered the thing. It looked like someone bled all over the paper, scratching that title. No, think about this. Use this word here. Make the reader want more with every single chapter. It was a really powerful exercise, and it helped me change all of my chapter titles to the point that even when I do radio interviews today for that book, which I published like 3 years ago, people still ask questions about specific chapters that have super creative titles. So creativity goes a long way. Goes a long way.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Real
it.
quick,
That's the 5.
Oh, I love that, man. That's awesome. Faye asked on Facebook, can you say that Stu quote again? So I'll say that I looked it up when I wrote the book, because I had first heard it from Stu. This quote has been attributed to so many different people. It's probably been around for 15 years. So I don't think Stu coined it, but it's people come for the content and they stay for the community. And Faye, I mean, I know, that's true of me. They come for a very specific reason. They Googled something, somebody referred them, but the reason they stick around is for these, and they stick around, and then they join our mastermind, and they buy our courses for the community. For the community. So as we wrap up, I want to know, Mike, I kind of want to do like almost like a hot seat, lightning round type thing. What would you say were like the 2 or 3 biggest things? Save your number one. Okay. Save your number one.
Yeah.
What were the 2 or 3 things that you did to grow your audience to the level it is that are still, relevant today? Like there might've been something you did, back in 2014 that you'd say, I don't know how relevant that is today. What would be like those top 2 or 3 things, but I want you to save number one. I'm going to ask you about that specifically here in a second.
Yeah. So one of the things that I made it a point to do 7 years ago that we still do today is listening to our audience. Listening to the question is this: what keeps you up at night? What is it that whether you are a parent of a child with a special need, or you are a big dreamer that has this idea to turn your idea into a platform, an online platform. What is it that keeps you up at night, right? Tell me what that is, because that's what I want to target, right? So we just did a big course launch with the Honestly Adoption Company. And that course is all about helping parents gain a simple understanding of their child's trauma and how to better respond to behaviors, right? One of the first questions we asked in our shot, what we call the shot across the bow question 2 months earlier, is what keeps you up at night?
Yeah.
So studying your audience, knowing your audience, you're not just creating a product or creating something that you're just pushing out into the stratosphere. You need to make sure that what you're creating is hitting the pain points. It's providing a solution to their biggest problems. It's answering that what keeps you up at night. So that's something we started in 2014. When we took this public, we decided this is what we're going to do for a living. We're still doing it today.
Nice.
We know the pain points of our audience in both Platform Accelerator and the Honestly Adoption Company. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing right there that we're
Okay.
still doing.
I
Not
said
number
say
one
the
though.
biggest thing.
Well, that's not the
what-
biggest. I'm sorry. Let me clarify. It's not the biggest. That's
Okay.
one of the biggest, but I'm saving number one.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would be like number 2 or 3?
Two, we've already talked about this, but clarity. That was a huge exercise for me. Like making sure that we're very, very clear on what we're all about, right? That when people show up, they know they're in the right place. That when people log on, when they consider buying our courses, when they consider joining our coaching group, that they know exactly that it's for them or not. That they can tell right away, I have this pain, I have this problem. They're going to provide me with the solution, right? Clarity is a huge thing.
How do you keep that clarity? You've been doing this for 9 years.
Yeah.
And because you're kind of, you're venturing off on these other things, and now you are seen as an expert, when maybe in 2012 you were like, well, I'm trying to just figure this crap out. Here's my journey. I love to ask people about that, because inevitably there is a transition from we have these archetypes, these 8 archetypes of like platform types, right? And the jolly journeyman, I like Harry Potter is like the fictional example that we use, because like, he's not Hermione. Hermione knows all the spells. She's the expert. He's clearly not Dumbledore, like
right.
He just happens to have this skill, and he kind of figures it out as he goes. And then he teaches it like 7 minutes later. Right. So that's the jolly journeyman. And I think that's probably where you started, because you started in this, like, I've got 8 kids in the back of the van. I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but whatever.
Yeah.
Now you're the expert. So how do you keep that clarity even though you're evolving?
Yeah. So it ties into what I spoke about a moment ago in knowing your audience, listening to your audience. I will flat out ask the question, is this hitting the mark for you? Is this hitting the target? I know it sounds very, very elementary, but we learn a lot from our audience. Even if you have a small audience, even if you're just starting and you've got 5, 10 people. When I launched Platform Accelerator last year, and we're still growing, we're still building that step by step. We started by asking the question, does this make sense? Is this something you need? One of the reasons why we changed our blog, we changed our business used to be called Confessions of an Adoptive Parent. Well, we changed it to the Honestly Adoption Company. And one of the biggest reasons why we changed that name was that we sat with people and they said, Confessions of an Adoptive Parent, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because you're offering support, you're creating online courses, you have a membership site, you have a coaching program. But it's called Confessions of an Adoptive Parent. It doesn't make sense. And that was in 2017, 2018. So that was already 4 years after we launched that. And we just continue to listen to what our audience says. That's primarily how we've changed, how we've evolved over the years with the Honestly Adoption Company. And I think that's how you achieve clarity. You just have to continue to ask the question, which is risky. It's risky for your heart. You have to know that that the reason why you're doing that is that you want to make whatever you have better, right? You want the end result to be even better than where you are now. So it's risky to put a survey out there and say, what do you like? What do you not like? What can we do better? Ouch, right? Nobody likes to have their toes stepped on, especially when you're talking about your baby, the podcast you created, the book you wrote, but if you want to get sharp, if you want to be sharper next time, you've got to go through that refinement. You've got to go through that sharpening, right? The way that I always say it is this, I'll hold my arm up. I have a tree tattoo on my arm. I don't know if y'all can see that. I'm not doing a very good job of showing you.
I wondered.
Yeah, there you go.
When did you get that?
About 3 years ago, right?
I was about to say that was
a long time ago, right? So here's the thing. This hurt. This was excruciating. I'm not going to lie. This is excruciating. I have a low pain tolerance already. Excruciating. And I never got used to the pain. but I accepted the pain because I knew that the end result was going to be something beautiful and something I really wanted. So I sat in that chair for an hour and a half, and I went through as the tattoo artist. I don't know what they use. I don't know what needles, brushes. I don't know what it's called, but I knew that the end result was going to be beautiful.
A brush.
Yeah, it's a brush with little needles. It feels like they're cutting into your arm. It's painful, but I knew that the end result would be beautiful. And that's how you have to look at not only your transformation, but also why you need to create what you need to create. It's something the world needs to see. It's art that the world needs. You believe in it. You know how transformational it is. It may hurt in these years or these months that you're building it, but it's so worth it in the end because it's creating the art that you believe in and art that the world will find beautiful.
I love that. So I'm going to ask you your number one thing, but I think it's a great question from Faye as we wrap up here. And I know we're running a little long, guys, but thank you, Mike. Real quick, I just want to remind you guys to go grab that audience growth guide and the worksheet from Mike. You can grab that at mattmcwilliams.com/grow with Mike. So Faye asked a question. I kind of like this one. And Robbie followed up asking, what's the niche? But she said, my subject is so niche down that I can only think of one course to develop. What's your thoughts about this being a sustainable business model? Thank you. My initial thought when I think of one course, what's about being a sustainable business model? Jeff Walker.
Yeah.
Product launch formula.
Yeah.
Is all he had for years.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, Faye. If you, Stu McLaren, the only course he has is Tribe.
Yeah.
From that course, you can go into a membership site, into a mastermind, into coaching and all those things. Stu, he's shared this publicly. I'll just say $10 million plus a year in revenue, probably a lot more, but I'm not at liberty to share some of that. But publicly, $10 million plus a year in revenue. One course.
Yep.
Membership sites. What does he do? Membership sites. You mentioned puppy and dog potty training. I think of Susan Garrett. What does she teach? Dog agility training. Yep. Multi-million-dollar, company. One course. Now, from there, you can venture another stuff. What are your thoughts on that, Mike? As soon as I read that question, I'm thinking Jeff Walker.
Yeah. When I was reading what she wrote, the first thought that came to my mind was narrow your focus, keep your focus narrow, especially as you're starting out. It's really easy to depending on who you're listening to, who you're following, to all of a sudden think, I'm going to start this, I'm going to start that. And you all of a sudden have created 10 things that are so versus one thing that's a total grand slam. So I actually like when she says that she can only think of one course to develop, then you focus heavily on that one course to develop. Best in
the world at that one thing.
Yeah. You kill that one thing. And I mean, what about that? You're killing it, right? You're rocking this. You're hitting a grand slam. And then, as you said, Matt, out of that, you develop a membership site. I have a good friend who puts people through a 6-month coaching program, and then it's a $997 coaching program. And then on the end, he offers a membership site for $45 a month, and he just continues to generate revenue. And it's just a funnel. He takes them through the course, and then there's a coaching program at the end. So I think start with the one thing, hit a grand slam with it.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I would imagine if you're teaching dog potty training, you probably know some other stuff that people would want to stick around for.
Yeah.
Our dog is potty trained, for example. He just turned a year old the other day. And as you say, and you can do affiliate marketing too, because here's the thing. They come to you and you have the course. You become known, Faye, as the world's leading expert on puppy potty training, So they're with you for like those 90 days. Those are an intense 90 days because they're peeing on your carpet and you're cleaning it up a lot.
Yeah.
And so I know that we went through that about 9 months ago, and so, but at the end of that 90 days, it's like, well, now what? Well, what are the other things, that you maybe you're not the best at, but they just want you, Faye. They spent 90 days with you, and they could go Google somebody else to learn I don't know, how to get your dog to come, how to get your dog to, stop barking, but they just want to learn from you. And so you can teach them those things, either be it another course or in a membership. I mean, all the things, the dog supplies, the dog food, the dog treats, you name it. Like, you can teach all that stuff, and like you said, recommend affiliate products for those things. So, all right, well, Mike, here we are at the very end. We've saved number one for last. Fun. What would you say, like, and not just for you, but it's like you've seen from others? What's the number one thing that people do, you've done, that has really kind of, has helped them grow this audience?
Yeah. So actually, originally, what I would tell you, we've already talked about this, but consistency, which is one of our 5 C's, is huge, right? Showing up every week. But in the last couple of years, I have discovered something that I believe, I don't care how big your audience is, I don't care whether or not you're starting out or you've been doing this for 20 years, can help you grow exponentially, and that is partnerships. So basically, and the reason I say partnerships is that Growth Tools, Growth University, which is a site that I've been working with and went through coaching with.
It's Brian Harris, right?
Brian Harris. Yeah, you're right. For some reason, Growth University was the first thing that popped in my mind. But yeah, it's all about borrowing other people's audiences. So entering into a partnership where you provide value to them, and in exchange, they can provide value to you. So we just launched a course through Honestly Adoption, the Honestly Adoption company. And it was twofold: affiliates, and also partners. So we strategically connected with people that had large platforms. And I'm telling you, we had 4,000 hot leads, brand new leads, from just 1 week of doing partnerships. And basically, I mean, it's as simple as that. I'm Matt, I reached out to you. This is a partnership that we're doing, right? It is the quickest way to grow an audience and not spend a dime on advertising.
There you go.
That's it.
So
that'll
risk.
do it. It's very much so. Very much so.
And I think, dude, you're speaking my language, Mike, as you know, because I and actually before I say it, well, I'll finish that thought. Because like people think, oh, I got to learn Facebook ads to start. Not to start. I got to go find an audience. Like, no, your audience is already out there. Mm-hmm. It's not like you have to create an audience. Now, if you are in some brand new niche, let's just say like cryptocurrency 7 years ago, or 8 years ago, whatever. Yeah, you had to create that niche. Like, you had to go out and you had to find people who they had no interest in crypto and get them interested in crypto. If you're coming into the crypto niche now, they're already out there. They're following other crypto experts. They're following, Twitter accounts and whatnot. The audiences are already out there. You just got to work with those audiences.
Absolutely.
And then I always advocate, like we're doing now, like Mike, our audiences are similar, but our topics are a little bit different. Mm-hmm. And so we find people that are in like the tangential niches. Mm-hmm. We find people who aren't quote unquote competitors, but they have a large percentage of their audience is our audience, and we worked with them. And that's, it's just the easiest way to grow. It's the lowest risk too, because here's the thing.
Very much so.
You go out and you run a Facebook ad, you're going to pay Zuckerberg $1,000. And just for like I'm going to get great. This thing's on Facebook's now going to get banned. Thanks a lot. Whatever. No, like I'm not saying don't run Facebook ads. We spend a lot of money on Facebook ads. The irony is, pretty thick there. I'm a big fan of it, but like you're going to pay Zuck whether you make a sale or not. If you go to Mike and say, Mike, can you promote me? Can we promote each other? And neither of you makes a sale, you didn't lose any money.
I didn't, not a dime. Yeah.
And I don't know about you when you started, Mike, but when I started my platform, $1,000 was like my limit that I could lose in like a year.
It was crushing. Didn't have any money. Yeah, that would have been crushing.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
And so for most of us, when we're starting out, we don't have like hundreds of thousands of dollars we can go spend like we're a drunken startup or something.
Right.
So we go out and we get affiliates. So to answer your question, Rudy, and I love this question. He wants to know, real quick as we wrap up, these affiliates that are making millions, I would like to know their process from A to Z. Rudy, shoot me a text. Shoot me a text at 260-217-4619. If anybody has a question, actually, that's a great place to ask. You can text me anytime, 260-217-4619. Please do understand, I am not the world's fastest text replier. I check text. I'm looking over my text messages right now. I'm like, my son's soccer coach texted me this morning. It's been 9 hours and I still haven't responded to him. So just bear with me. I might take a day to respond, but I will respond because I've got some thoughts for you, Rudy, that we don't have time to get into today because I have a podcast interview in like 7 seconds. So
you got to go, man.
Dude, thank you. This has been awesome. I'm glad we worked through your blue rectangle phase. You totally would have, like, that line right there at the bottom is kind of like blending into your shirt.
Yeah. That wouldn't have been fun. I mean, my voice is okay.
Yeah,
I think I think my face is better. That's my personal opinion. And my mom thinks that too. So, it's been fun, man.
Dude. So guys, go check that out. The thing I mentioned earlier, the audience growth guide and worksheet from Mike. He's been so generous to share that with you guys. Robbie dropped the link earlier. I dropped the link earlier. It was just, Robbie dropped it in my name. MattMcWilliams.com/grow with Mike. Go grab that. Thanks for the awesome questions, Faye and Rudy and Mike, man. Appreciate you. And
likewise.
So have to get down there soon. If I can ever get, we just have soccer all the time. That's all.
Come on down to the farm, man. You're all